I will admit I got a little confused on who was who with the psychiatrist, the anthropologist, the surveyor. That was the other one.
Well, first, are we recording?
Yeah, yeah, we're recording.
Oh, bet.
Okay, cool. Yeah, cool. All right.
Start.
Hello, book
Hello.
club. Yes, books. Uh,
Reading. It's epic.
yeah, good for
Jordy
you.
is clearly excited about this episode.
I I've been waiting so long. I fucking love this book. Freaking love this book.
Oh.
Ah,
Sorry, I got mochi treat.
Buggy,
mm.
buggy, buggy,
I got a
buggy.
bribe this morning, so I've just been snacking on mochi treats all day.
It's the way to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess I've read this before, so I'll just throw it open. What give me your general thoughts.
Do we want to start with
Overarching.
the summary, or do we want to go straight to thoughts?
You can do both
All right.
at the
So
same time.
I'll let feeB go first then.
Oh, okay. Uh, it it's hard to describe. It feels like it was written by a scientist who's slowly like going insane and saying, "Yeah, this stuff's kind of messed up." And we only really get biologist perspective, as in like, oh, here's the pond I grew up with. I like this stuff. And like, oh, these are some weird plants. Don't really get like why things are weird, like why the plants are different, if they are different at all.
So kind of like, is that more so like like you wish they would have gone more into the plants,
Yeah,
like
like
kind of descriptor of the
what
plants?
yeah, what exactly was different in the zone? Because they just like kind of say like, oh, there's the moss that has the writing. That's weird. There's the dolphins that had like human eyes, maybe, and there's nothing much. Like, I'm also kind of comparing it to the movie, and they can at least show why it's so weird, and like the taxonomy of the plants just changing from the root plant, like having different species basically. But in the book, it just feels like maybe some things are weird other than
I
like
think
the moss.
yeah, I think the book definitely it is kind of hard to do, but the book definitely relies on you just being like, the vibes are off. It
It,
doesn't,
the zone has failed the vibe check.
yeah, like how to say it. Like I guess it doesn't necessarily like need to explain why things are weird.
Yeah.
Which I'll get into it. That's that I have a soapbox about this, but I'll do that last.
Okay.
I guess I'll go into my thoughts then. And one thing I liked it a lot actually. It bears a lot of resemblance to a book we'll be reading in December, I
December,
believe.
yeah.
A Roadside Picnic, which is one of my favorite novels of all time.
I'm
Also,
excited
the
for that.
inspiration for the game Stalker.
And the movie
Both,
Stalker.
also the movie Stalker. Yeah. It's has the same kind of like it doesn't really go into why or how things are weird, just that it's uncomfortable. Like things are different without kind of going into detail why. It very much relies on kind of the feeling of the uncanny. And kind of the difference between that book and this book is like these are professionals. These are people who are like specifically trained and prepared, which I also kind of like because one of my things I did like about the book is like everyone in this book is hyper efficient, even if things go to shit like 2 minutes into the book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how the book just starts. It just starts like there's no build up, there's no like preamble. They're just like
Instantly, yeah.
shit's fucked. Yeah, we are in the zone. Shit's a little fucky wucky, but that's fine. We're gonna deal with it. They give like a brief description of what their goal is. Like it feels like a journal. Like it's a very good approximation of a journal,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty cool for this format. I also like how it's very subtle how the main character goes fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it
she
is
just
it is.
she
Go ahead.
rolls with it so hard. It's very subtle, but especially rereading it, you kind of just pick up on little things that you're just like, hey, hey,
There
you're
you
not
go.
okay.
One of my favorite lines is when she's like monologuing about her husband. A lot of the book is her monologuing about her husband. Now that I think back on it,
Yeah.
which I guess considering the ending makes sense. But I kind of also like that how a good part of it was contextualizing the relationship she had with her husband and like how it changed and how different things and her perspective is changing within the zone and her rapidly worsening mental and physical state. And so I thought that was a very interesting thing that the author was able to convey that in such a way that worked really well in a text format,
I think
which is not
also
something. Oh, good.
I think also with how I don't vague isn't the right word, but how vague it was that I we don't really know much about either of them. Like we have like cursory information about the biologist who the book is narrated through, but we don't we really don't know that much about her. We know
Yeah.
the stream of consciousness of someone that's in a really scary situation. So I kind of I like how her talking about her husband throughout the book was still really believable, even though I barely had any information about it.
Yeah, like I think that the relationship between they had and like strained, but like they loved each other, but there was clearly a very strained relationship was good too. Like I think I was thinking about specifically about the part where they were she's talking about going out to the bar with her friends with her husband's friends because she didn't really she's a very solitary person. She likes her own company. And her husband was like, "Oh, like how did we have fun? We were out with our friends." And she was like, "I was kind of just vibing. You were hanging out with your friends." There's also the term that I fucking love the pet name they had, Ghostbird,
Yeah, Ghostbird.
which also is like my side thoughts of this, like being a book more not necessarily not about the zone and kind of the effects of the zone, but also it's a book about like human nature and relationships in a very short amount, or no short amount,
Yeah,
pardon me.
that's thing I didn't like about the movie is that it's way more about the zone, but it's still like, oh, they have a bad relationship, and it's kind of supposed to be about how like human nature is self-destructive, but we can like do something about it.
Hmm.
I think too, and we're already talking about the movie. I think the movie sucked in the sense that number one, what's that actress's name who plays the biologist?
Uh,
Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman.
Not port. Natty
So
Port, bro.
it's Natalie Portman is the biologist, which I don't like that casting choice, and Oscar Isaac is her husband. Uh, they play Natalie Portman and Oscar Isaac in that movie. They're not a believable couple at all,
Yeah,
and it makes any focus on the marriage parts of this book in the movie just really weird. It didn't feel right throughout that whole movie. It was really frustrating to watch.
yeah. They
And I
also
should say I was not seeing the movie. I'm not. I can't really attest to that.
and they also changed it to where she met him in the military, and they both served in the army. But in the book, he was just like a sailor, and they met at a park.
Yeah, it I have a lot of gripes with the movie. It is a pretty movie. Like it's worth watching.
That's one thing
As an
I want. I like.
oh,
It's like because the one thing I kind of to jump back to complaints before I kind of move on to this. Like I do agree with feeB. I wish they would have gone a little more fantastical about it. Because the to spoil the movie, the zone is basically like a prism. It filters reality through a prism's lens, so it's all just like slightly different.
Yeah, think color out of space, but you get to travel through more than just like some rinky-dink farm.
Which I think
it,
gives the book and then the movie it recontextualizes the book for me too. Because like I didn't necessarily have as much as a problem because I have the visual aid already, but not having the visual aid of the movie definitely would be make it a
Helpful.
little more muted, perhaps.
Oh,
eh, trying to think how to say this. I think I'll say this. The movie's like 2 hours long. I think an hour and a half of that is like great. It's a pretty good movie. But I think the way they end it just felt really weird, especially like rereading how this book ends, like uh I guess spoiler territory, but like this book pretty much ends with a scene of her like interacting with the crawler. And whatever translation happened between that scene in the movie and in here, it just
Way
didn't.
different. Yeah.
It's weird. I think they were trying a little too hard in the movie.
Yeah, and like, I wish it's super easy to tell which is Natalie Portman and which is the crawler in the movie. Like, I wish they made it super hard because there's a couple points where like Natalie Portman just passes out, but the crawler is still like the weird green iridescent thing. When they could have had it switch into Natalie Portman sooner and do all that, so then you're like, okay, which is which? And then like she still comes back like clearly affected by the zone, even though the entire time she's perfectly fine until the very end of the movie. But I like how in the book, almost from the get go, she's like clearly affected by it and stuff's going wrong.
In the first like, I think it's like first like 5 paragraphs, she gets infected by the spores.
Yeah, like
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Like it is a lot of the genesis of the events of the book is because she fucked with shit she should not have been fucking with. But I
yeah,
guess kind of the whole also the whole book is just like humanity kind of did an oopsie whoopsie by coming here. Never should have come here.
yeah. We I know the ultimate truth. We never should have come here. Which is what the psychiatrist says. That's also a difference I liked in the book. How like the biologist finds all the commands, and you like the whole time they're talking about how they were hypnotized. In the book, they go into the shimmer, and it's like, oh, we're awake, and they keep going, and like they only say like the title Annihilation at the end when the psychiatrist turns into like a bunch of stars or whatever. But in the book, she's just like repeating it the second the psychologist sees this biologist, and then you see that, oh, this is the kill yourself phrase.
Yeah, it's dude, the psychologist is such like a cool character, also so terrifying. And also
Yeah.
just like I like how they handled like the hypnosis thing in this book, where it is kind of its own boogeyman because even like throughout the whole time the biologist knows that there's probably a lot of information she simply doesn't have because she doesn't know how much hypnosis she was under, how many times she was like hypnotically suggested to just like forget things, implanted memories, which the psychologist suggests that the biologist just kind of like lets slide. She doesn't like say anything about that.
There's
I don't
also
know.
a really go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was done.
There's a really sad moment in it where she's talking about the relationship with her husband, and then she like puts two and two together about like, oh, he may have not have actually wanted to go on the exposition, he or the travel to the zone. He might have been hypnotized into believing he did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like she might have kind of not forced him to do it, but like there's already troubles with their marriage, and he was doing it hoping that she would say, no, don't go, I want you to stay, and she didn't do that. And it's like, oh damn, did she also maybe kind of push him to it, like their marriage was failing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to
Yeah.
think about. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of like little things in this book I think hurt you when you think about it. The thing that always hurts me is the anthropologist.
Oh man, anthropologists out here living their best life,
Yeah.
trying, quite literally trying to live their best life, and then going batshit.
Rest in peace, I guess.
I guess we kind of skipped over summarizing it. If we want to do that real quick, just for anyone who needs a refresher on it or isn't so familiar with it.
I guess this one's hard to summarize without
Massive
blowing it.
spoilers, yeah.
Yeah, but I guess generally speaking, there's this large area in an undisclosed part of the United States that they have called Area X, and it is like an unknown biological issue. And to attempt to study it, the Southern Reach is sending expeditions into what they call Area X to attempt to figure out anything they can get on it. Um, they're kind of these. The expedition we're looking at is the 12th expedition, which is a team of 4 women. There's a biologist, an anthropologist, a psychologist, and a surveyor, and that is their names throughout the book. They do not have names. Um, and uh, it goes a little. goes a little kooky quirky. Stuff's really weird. 12 expeditions, and they act like before they got sent in here, the Southern Reach kind of acts like they know a lot about this, but it kind of seems like they don't, and they learn that pretty quickly once they get in there. And then, yeah, I guess that's kind of the best way to summarize it. Nothing
Without
is
getting
what it seems.
you literally, I think a good way to look at it is like just don't treat it like a fantasy novel. Like anything you think you know about like reality is just not applicable within the zone. It's like completely abnormal in the
Mhm.
very literalist of senses, which is also pretty cool, I think, because it's I like and don't like it because they don't really like acknowledge it that it's weird. It just is. Like it is a force of nature almost. Just the oddity and the strangeness. Like there's one of the key like things they notice early on that's like ooh creepy spooky is there is a like wall of writing and mushrooms like in English, like it's written in English too, and it's like God hand script. It's like beware the death, open thine eyes, the seed of the punished sinner, whatever.
Yeah, like what is it? It's like the
Where
sinner
lies
who
the
has
strangling fruit and all that fun stuff?
yeah, like death will be given to lie with the worms. The
Yeah, let
seed.
me see if I can
Yeah, we need to
And
pull up.
that's how the book opens, so you know you're fucking in for it.
got the book right here. I could probably find it.
Well, it's all like split up and segmented in the book. I'm trying to see if someone's ever actually just like,
Put together the whole string.
yeah, I just want to know what the whole string is.
There are also a lot of breaks where they skip, which makes it feel more like journal entries instead of one long narrative.
Yeah, like the book is blisteringly fast and an event that takes like a week or two.
Okay, I have the text pulled up. I'll read some of it. So on the wall, the text starts, where lies the strangling fruit that came from the hand of the sinner? I shall bring forth the seeds of the dead to share with the worms that gather in the darkness, and surround the world with the power of their lives, while from the dim lit halls of other places, forms that never were and never could be, writhe for the impatience of the few who never saw what could have been. That's just one sentence. There's a whole paragraph here. But yeah, it's I think even in one of the journals she finds later, uh someone describes it as something that sounds like it came out of Genesis, but it is completely unknown to all of them. It sounds like a quote, but no one knows what this would be quoting, basically.
It's like, damn, this shit kind of elegant but weird though.
Yeah,
And it's like
kind of goes off.
they can't tell if someone wrote it and then the mushrooms grew into it, or if the mushrooms grew into the words.
Oh yeah, and there's the other thing that so there's the writing that the biologist can read. Did I misunderstand that part actually? Because I thought the biologist said she understood it, but didn't seem like anyone else understood what it said.
I thought the others couldn't see it. Like she saw that the building was also like breathing and the walls were moving and the was it the surveyor that was down there with her?
Yeah, because what the vibe I got from that was when the psychiatrist was like, "It's made of brick and stone. Like, don't fucking think about it." So she was the only one who could see that it was made of organic material and like breathing and like it was a living creature within theory.
Yeah, and she kind of brings that up again later with like what was it? She was saying that like the walls. She said walls, but she took a sample when if it was normal walls, she wouldn't have needed to, and she recognized that maybe it's messing with her head, and she couldn't even recognize it as something else. So she just her mind filled in that it was a wall, but she still took a sample.
There's also, I guess, that kind of makes sense too, because it's like you, not that necessarily she's an unreliable narrator, just the zone is fucking insane and impossible to understand,
Yeah,
and
Yeah, I
they're all
like that.
constantly hallucinating too.
Yeah, the book is kind of like, so technically speaking, what she's written here is what she just sat down before she gets on the boat and just wrote everything out. So, she knows that she's unreliable, but still that inward fight of like she's unreliable, but god damn it, there's still science to be had here, so she's going to write down what she can
Yeah.
Mm.
even to the end. I did find the page. So she's the only one that can read it. She recognizes that it's like cursive words, and the other ones recognize that it's words, but no one else makes any mention that they can read what it says. And when the biologist is describing the words, she's the only one that mentions what's written. There's also another part where she talks about perhaps other symbols being written alongside it when it's just her and the surveyor down there. And I guess that's something I forgot to mention. There was supposed to be 5 women.
Oh yeah.
The 5th person was supposed to be a linguist,
But
and
in the book it says she died like right off the bat, didn't she?
uh, she didn't even cross the border.
Yeah.
The psychologist just said that she backed out. So we don't really know what happened to her at all.
If anything at all. Like I guess it's at least in my thoughts, it's like what happened to her wasn't really relevant because nothing really ended up being relevant in the story either.
Yeah, so that's my soapbox is that I love this book a lot. It's a very good sci-fi. I think it's also like you can also take this kind of book in the opposite direction, and like it is scientific and it makes sense as a sci-fi. Like it's clearly appealing to what we understand of science to create a story. But I also think this book is strangely literary in the sense that like everything in here serves the serves a narrative purpose to make this to kind of like draw the lines between like the biologist and her husband and then all this kooky shit that's going on the other side.
Yeah,
um
like there's two very distinct narratives running through at the same time.
yeah, which it kind of makes me it this will segue into my next question, but I don't know if you realize this is the first novel in a trilogy.
I
Oh.
did see that looking up the audiobook.
So do you think you will read the next book?
I certainly will.
Yeah, I will now that I know there are more books.
Interesting.
And as I mentioned, not to go talk about something we'll be watching later in the year, but there's a lot of overlap into Stalker
Which
or into a roadside picnic.
I think is kind of intentional. It feels like he was definitely inspired by it to write this book. Like,
Isn't it? There's a lot of the same theme of like, or go ahead.
like it definitely feels like Stalker and Annihilation could be set in like the same universe or whatever.
Hmm. Which also I think kind of works because Stalker is a communist, is written by a communist as a critique on communism, or at least the USSR rather than communism itself, as most works in that era are, honestly.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see kind of the same through line of two very different eras and writing styles. Because that a roadside picnic came out in the 70s.
Think so, yeah.
I think it's
72.
in I think it's interesting. You are so willing to read the sequel.
Yeah, it's like I think I'm invested in the world. Even the ending I think was interesting, set up an interesting premise too. I
Well,
mean, as okay.
I say it's interesting because I've tried to read the sequel before, and it kind of does a thing where it explains.
Uh,
And I don't that's not really a spoiler. You kind of figure that out pretty quick. And I
Hmm.
could be wrong. I didn't get very far into it before, and I'm already gonna start on it anyway to give it another shot. But I think the first time I read this book, I was really like fascinated with like the science side of it, and just how like basically like a horror science fiction story. But now that I'm reading it, I guess I am a little more willing to look at the sequel because I don't think the explanation would bother me as much.
That's a good way to look at it too, because it's like, yeah, I mean, it's bullshit. It's air quotes science by someone who's very educated in science, kind of just making shit up that follows like conventional science that we wouldn't understand, which I think is really cool. Like that's not a me calling it bullshit is not a bad thing. It's very grounded in reality, I guess would be a much nicer way to put that.
I look up.
Yeah, and especially near the end, it feels like a scientist just making stuff up to rationalize what's happening because they take a couple pages to explain like when they were studying the barnacles and they just kind of drunkenly went out at some early point in the morning to see if it was any different, and that same sort of feeling of like dread and mystery was happening now that she's seeing the walker crawler.
And it's also like nerding about like by the point she's doing this, she is barely human by our standards, completely insane. All of her party is dead.
And more spoilers, she's well, at least she thinks she's glowing, and she has to keep hurting herself to stop the glow from spreading.
Whether or not
Yeah,
she is actually
that gets
glowing.
kind of glossed over, doesn't it?
Yeah.
She's
Yeah,
just like, oh, the glow kind of slows down if I hurt myself. I figured this out because I got shot. And then she just mentions at the end that, oh yeah, this kind of sucks to hurt myself, so I'm gonna stop. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it is. It's good. Like I think it was a really good book, and I like a lot of the science and kind of the like. It's a bunch of competent people being pushed to the limit, and some of them breaking hard. But yeah, I definitely was a big fan of it. I'm quite excited. I know you mentioned you couldn't get into the other ones, but I'm excited to try. You know.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm gonna try again. I think the problem I had with it before, probably I don't think it'll be a problem this time.
Mm.
But okay, so I guess just a fun plot question. How'd you feel about the big reveal of the pile of journals in the lighthouse?
From my extensive knowledge of series that have secret science organizations like SCP or any other comparable, is like, yeah, that tracks. I was like, nope, that is the 100% on brand for an organization like this. I think it was a good twist though. It was like, oh shit, shit's been fucking wild, and they're panicking and trying to cover their ass because they're afraid. Everyone's afraid. The crawler probably afraid.
I
I mean,
think it
shout out to the
was
crawler. Man was really quite out here just living his best life, writing shit on walls.
he really was just kind of chilling, vibing. Like, let him chill, let him vibe, you know?
Mm-hmm. That
He
literally meant just writing his doomsday prophecies and everyone fucking messing with them.
I think it was cool. Like I feel like the reveal, oh, here's a large pile of journals. I think that sounds lame, but the way she describes it and how like there's so many journals stacked in this one spot that the bottom journals are like completely rotten. Like there's only probably a third or a half of the pile that she can actually even like that actually has usable information for her because the rest of it has been there for so long and is so rotted and gross that it's unreadable.
The way it kind of felt to me, it was analogous of a the obviously it's not the same, but kind of in the way that it wrote it. The author wrote it, and the tone of it. It felt like less it was a pile of books and more it was a pile of corpses.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the level of shock and like panic and like uncomfort the
Yeah.
biologist had.
She's more uncomfortable with the pile of journals than the pile of bodies she's walking past to get to the top of the lighthouse.
Yeah.
Now that I
The
think
quite
about it.
literal body. Yeah, I guess yeah, she did walk past a literal body piles of bodies.
She I kind of forgot that too. Like she's talking about how it's like tore up and shit. And then she gets to the top and she's like, "Oh, no bodies up here." I'm like, "Wait a second. There was bodies down there. You didn't mention. I forgot. You walked past bodies just now."
Which I guess just furthers my point that she was more unhinged by the journals than the literal corpses.
Yeah, like I guess same, but also.
What the fuck, bro?
Heck's going on?
Trying to think
Yeah.
if there's anything else we can talk about. I guess I bads. I guess we kind of talked about it, but anything else specifically that you're just like, eh.
Um. Mm, Nothing like particular. I mean, my biggest thought is I think they should have. I would have liked a little more, air quotes, literal world building, as in like descriptions of the world around them. Would have been, I think, nice. Just made a little more sense within the context of the world and giving you an idea of just how unsettling it is.
Yeah, like all we really got was the journals of the person saying, "Oh, these thistles are mighty weird, ain't they?"
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
A little bit strange. Bit strange.
Or like,
But
oh,
yeah, go ahead.
the dolphins might have had human eyes. They were weird.
I feel like we did kind of like they kind of glossed over that part.
Yeah, I feel I again though, just comparing to the movie, gonna happen. That's one of those things that I do think that is probably something you have to see. You know, like
Mm.
for that to really kind of strike fear into you, because you can read that two different ways. If the biologist just says, "I saw some dolphins and their eyes were strangely human to me," that can mean two things. That can mean that they were strangely human, or that the biologist is so transformed that she feels a different kinship to dolphins, especially these little kooky quirky ones in Area X.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those. I think they went a little too hard on the like observationalist biologist and a little less on the I should probably build this world,
Mm-hmm.
which is fair. You know, it's a as someone who is completely unqualified to be critiquing writers, I feel like that's a pretty easy mistake to write if you're trying to make a book a certain way.
Well, I don't know, mistake. I think just
Choice
maybe,
rather.
maybe cop out, wasted potential.
Mm-hmm. Because like it's a biologist. Like she goes fucking ham on describing the fucking child. Pardon me, swearing on the freaking
Pond.
pool she has, pool pond she makes in her backyard. Like that just goes on for a while. She's writing like paragraph after paragraph about how much she loves this little ecosystem she built, and then like is literally in a hellscape science sci-fi like world, and she's like
Eh,
the dolphins are kind of freaky though.
yeah, I may study, animals and like the different way they evolve, but it's a weird place, I guess. Oh, saying in the chat, who said we couldn't cuss in the book club? Fuck it.
But think of the algorithm, the
There you go.
analytics.
We
The
are
analytics, the
safe.
algorithm, the numbers.
We are safely past 10 minutes, but I just
True,
don't want to curse as much.
that's fair.
Is that still a thing? The review only goes 10 minutes in.
Oh yeah, it's still a thing.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. All right. Okay. Any concluding wrap up final thoughts? I think we did pretty good, but anything else you want to throw out there?
Disney was a
Mm.
bitch ass, and I could beat it. I could get the
Yeah.
lighthouse in 2 days. Fuck people.
Oh, give me a few good cheeky breakies.
I'm built
Take it.
different.
That's right. I'm calling out the lighthouse on Twitter.com.
I'll beat its ass. Oh, it's gonna make a clone of me? Okay, I know all of my weaknesses and strengths. I can definitely exploit it while it's trying to copy me.
from that uh from that Sonic fandom. Area X fucked my wife. Right, my
Harry
follow
X,
post on
fuck my
twitter.com.
husband. I think I use that. I reference that video very often. It's so good. Shout out, official shout out, PowerPoint shout out to the Sonic Adventures live dub and all the subsequent dubs they do. Highly worth your time if you want to giggle. If you need something to bring you up from the like, not almost nihilistic slog that was this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say, I think, other than tune in for next month, which is I don't actually know the book for next month.
Hold on, I know it. uh, Evolution and Religion
Ah,
by
we're going back to
Greg.
a sciencey book.
Yeah, this one might be a textbook actually.
Book gay.
Book gay?
Book gay.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's the other thing I don't like about the movie is like there's supposed to be scientists, but I think the one lady with the glasses, she's in
Oh,
4 now, only says like one sciency thing at the end, and then
Yeah.
like the other lady I think is just military personnel because all she says is just like she tries to flirt with Natalie Portman. Granted, I would too. And she's like, "Oh, why are you trying to have sex with everyone here?" It's like we're about to die. Might as well shoot my shot. And that's it.
I need
We know nothing
there.
else about her life. Oh wait,
Also, it's go ahead.
except for the throwaway line that she's an alcoholic. But even then, there's nothing else.
Yeah, at least this one like did a surprisingly good job. Oh, that is another good thing I want to say before we run the outro.
Oh.
I think they did a very good job of giving everyone a character in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely like individual people, even though I don't know their name or literally anything about them. I
Like it
feel like
gives
they're
you just enough.
distinguished well. I think that's the way I'm trying to say it.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
It's but as Mr. Chief Executive Monkey is pointing out, it is the paper is by the lead singer of Bad Religion.
Let's go. I'm ready. I placed my order today.
Let's see if it's on audiobook first because I like listening to things. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Either one of you guys,
No?
Mr. Monkey, you have anything from the sidelines you wanna yell at me,
Chief.
Chief Monk?
Oh, fart
He
noise.
made a fart noise. Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to
Thank
sound
you,
like
feeB.
that.
Thank you.
Well, on that note, I'm Kaden with P. You can find me at PPPCaden on Twitter. That's all I kind of got going on right now. Where can they find you guys?
uh, uh, Twitter at bookkeeper Theo.
I'm at feeB on VHS on Twitter.
Yes. All right. See you next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.